you doing?
Excellent.
Let's thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
You know, I think most people think about the kind of basic realities in a restaurant. I order the food, it comes, it doesn't make me sick, it's not too expensive, I'm out.
Really? It doesn't make you sick is what you're thinking?
I mean, I'm saying
What about it makes you feel good?
well, okay, so the threshold, let's say, for someone who's not paying attention is kind of low.
Okay.
Obviously, the food not making you sick is setting the bar relatively low. Food being great is relatively high. But the food is one step in the creation of an experience.
Correct.
So for one who doesn't know like what goes into the kind of creation of that moment, what goes through your mind when you're beginning to conceive of a restaurant concept?
The first three things, and they come together at about the same time, is where it's going to be, what is going to be its name, and who is going to operate it with me. And they all kind of have to coagulate at about the same time, because you can think about it having a Sicilian restaurant, but until you have a place to put it in a design that you either shoehorn into it, or you can create it and build it from scratch, then you have nothing. And then if you have the location and you have the talent, the chef or the maitre d' or the general manager or the operations manager, then you start to put together all of the other details. So once you have the human and the abstract together, then you can start to put together something that's more concrete.
So it's interesting you mentioned the name. That's a big driver. So name, brand, the kind of concept flows from that nomenclature.
Right.
Tell me about that, like how one name you experienced in the past became a big driver for design.
Well, we want to make sure that there's almost no way for you not to be able to find us. So we try to create names that are impossible to mispronounce if you call information or if you decided to Google it.
Okay,
So Babbo, Lupa, Otto, Casamono's a long one, Del Posto, Osteria Mozza, like these are all words that could hopefully stick in your mind.
So basically you pass that third syllable, you're out.
Kind of.
So you really do think of it in those terms. So it's really practical and simple initially.
Right, exactly. You want to give everybody the opportunity to remember it, even if they're not thinking about it. And you also want people to recognize it or at least feel attracted to it, even if they've never heard of you and aren't looking for you specifically.
Okay, so the name hopefully works for recognition and simplicity, but then it starts to kick back ideas about what it wants to be.
Right.
Tone, texture, feeling, sensibility. How does that relationship evolve?
Well, I mean, you've got your location, you've pretty much figured out the name, you've got the chef, now you start to write the menu and you start to imagine how the experience will start at the door. And even from across the street, because you want the environment to look inviting, be recognizable as a restaurant, as a place where you'll go for comfort, but also you want it to be kind of interest-picking if, for example, you were driving along the street and you weren't really thinking about anything and you saw, ooh, there's that logo, I recognize that name. Where's that guy from? Was he on Top Chef? Is that Emeril Lagasse's restaurant? No, not that.
Okay, then I'll go to
Hold
that
on,
one.
let me Google the phone, let me see. Oh, Babbo, that's Batali, that's right, I want to go there. Even though you'd never really planned on being on Waverly Place. Now that you see it, it kicks in a whole series of things that we hope will eventually bring you in the door.
So thinking about it's interesting because, you know, a director makes a film. He or she has 2.5 hours to participate with the beholder. A sculptor makes a piece, you're around it for a period of time. From your perspective, I'm across the street, I see the sign. You have the better part of, say, 2 hours to engage me.
Correct.
Do you think about the kind of the choreography of that sequence?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about how, like, kind of how you would imagine that kind of
Well,
sequence
hopefully
being
when you
designed?
walk in, immediately you feel some palpable energy. In New York City, there is a thing that sometimes in other towns doesn't happen. But when you walk into our restaurant, you suddenly feel like, hopefully, you feel enthusiastic, excited, and instantly part of what it is. Like, we want you to be in with us. It's not you stand out there and we're going to show you something. We want you to be in and feel immediately in some kind of a cocoon that protects you from the New York City environment, but also allows you to feel that you're in the club with the people that are all in there at the same time.
So as opposed to the, do you have reservations, and the room is empty and I feel weird about myself, you avoid that moment.
Well, everyone avoids the room empty moments, but in a case, it means that you have to walk a little bit through the place to first ascertain whether you're going to be seated there, or there. Like, you don't just it's not at the door that the maitre d' stands like a guard protecting the barrier and not allowing you in. You walk into the bar, and almost all of our restaurants, and there's a certain situation that you can see, and it's generally happy people having a good time drinking and eating things that they love. And if you get to that, all of a sudden you're already enthusiastic. You're like, hey, this is good. I'm feeling good about it. And the music's on the upper side of not quite painful, but relatively loud and exciting, kind of like we were discussing earlier, why they were playing such loud music when there was no one here on stage
Right.
yet. And it kind of sets the tone, it gets your heart beating a little bit, and then there's all of the details that we pay attention to, which is how are the lights set, where are the lights, what kind of reflection do the light give to the human form. We want everyone to look pretty, so we have orange and pink lighting in generally most of our restaurants, not too much from below to make you look a little jolly, but you're always kind of be interested in that. There's a light emanating from the purchase point of the bar. It says, this way to beverage consumption.
Drink me.
Exactly.
Drink me.
And then the restaurant's a little bit lower lit than the bar, and the music's a little quieter in the restaurant than it is in the bar, but it's still, you can feel the energy of the bar because the bar's still relatively attached. And the bar can self-stand by itself, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So then you get in, you realize here's, well, tablecloths or no tablecloths? Well, we think about it. Depends on the restaurant. Pablo has tablecloths. It lets you know that there's a certain seriousness here, although we might actually throw the seriousness out if we have the opportunity to. The presentation of the menu. At Pablo, we were fortunate enough to get Coach Leather to design the actual leather cases themselves. So it feels suddenly you're like, this is now something, a premium product I'm
Serious
sensing
business.
here, right? You turn around, you look at it, you're like, Coach Leather, what the hell's going on here? Am I going to have to pay for this? Then the wording of the menu and the font. We like predominantly New York Times Roman because it's the easiest one for her to read. It's like on my watch. It's got real numbers, no Roman numerals, nothing I can't recognize. There's bold in one word in each of the lines on the menu that tells you this is spaghetti, this is veal, this is prosciutto.
So I have a question. So in terms of the moment, let's say, setting up expectations, then changing them, I've sat down, I'm holding this menu, I'm like, oof, I'm on a date. This is going to cost more than I thought it was going to cost.
Right?
What do you
or
do
I
then?
can't believe what good value Batali
Right,
puts on the table.
But then
This is remarkably inexpensive for something that smells and tastes so good.
trademark Mario
Exactly.
Batali.
Ding!
What do you do to undermine that? To say, you know what, this is actually really comfortable, and I mean, is the fact that it's spaghetti and it's not super foofy and overdeveloped.
Right.
Do you
The
try and
idea
kind
is that you hopefully you recognize some of these terms, but we also on purpose put terms on that you won't know.
So
I mean, you
what's
might
an-
know if
what's
you're
an
like a
example of
foodie.
that?
Well, sometimes we'll leave it in Italian. We'll put guancia ripiena, and it says with escarole and sun-dried tomatoes and whatever. And people can't possibly know what guancia ripiena is because we made it up.
Right.
But what it means is a stuffed cheek. But it's the cheek of a pig that's been taken off the face and then stuffed with vegetables, rolled and braised, and then we finish it on the griddle. You can't have had that. Well, you might have had it somewhere else, but it's less likely.
That's right.
And we want to, but that should start the interaction, if you so desire, with the service staff. And they don't come over and say, hi, my name's Billy Bob, and I'm going to take care of you tonight. It's more like, hi, welcome. That's our hello. Hi, welcome. Not my name, not what can I get for you. It's like, hi, welcome. We've already thrown it back at the customer. The customer's like, well, what are you going to do with this? Hi, nice to see you. Or, we're really busy right now. Why don't you get the fuck out of my face? You know, like, and that happens in New York all the time.
But you specifically provoke that
Specifically
experience.
want them to engage in this
Like
place.
you create a semi-socially awkward moment.
Yes.
Put it in the lap of the
Yes.
customer and make them engage.
Right.
They don't have the choice to be taken care of
No,
in that
they
moment.
can easily, and they can easily go like this.
Yeah, you can
And that works all right. Effectively, in New York City, there's a lot of people that are very tense because they live in a very crowded town.
Right.
They may have had a bad experience at work. They may not have a good family situation today. They may have had bad lunch. They may have had whatever. If we can get them in, get them something to drink and something to eat, short of giving them a little bit of a nap, we're already on the way to excellent happiness.
And chances are, if they're in New York, they have a therapist, so they're used to that weird silent moment anyway.
Right, exactly.
So it's a familiar sense
Right,
to
exactly.
it. But I want to point out, that's really interesting. I mean, down to the instructions the server has to not be like, hey, how you doing? Want a jalapeno popper?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
You've taken that all... That's totally out of the equation, and you literally create a relationship between them, and you have the customers initiate that relationship.
Right, exactly. Because it's on their terms then. It's not like I'm telling them what's going to happen and how it's going to go. They know what it is. They know that this is a thing. This is a restaurant. We're going to have a meal. But some people come in, and I'm one of those. I come in with a group of 6 people. I don't want to genuflect at the altar of the chef. I don't really want to pay too much attention after we get the stuff going because I'm there with my guests.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the restaurant will accommodate our needs, which vary from table to table. Some people want to know everything about it. They want to find out where you got the guancia ripiena, where you get your salad, what kind of dressing you use, blah, blah, blah. And we'll engage them on that level because that information exchange is a fundamental part of it. But there are a lot of people that don't want the information exchange. They're there to have dinner, and they're more about the person sitting next to them than me or the maitre d' or the bartender or anybody like that. And we respect that, so we let them tell us first. But we don't say, hey, do you want to have me really invade you all day, or do you want to just have it kind of your own way?
So how much in terms of the design of the experience, is your staff told this is a specific interpersonal situation we're going to orchestrate and we're going to train you to do that?
It's 100%. That's exactly what we do. Oh yeah.
So it's not like, oh, you're in musical theater on the weekends, do your shtick and be
Right.
hilarious, as most waiters in New York will have had some time in musical theater. You'll ask them to kind of say, no, don't do that.
Right.
This is how we do it here.
This is how we want you to do it. And it makes it easier because you can, without saying, hey, how was your day, can you tell if there's anything we can do to save it or if it's just going to be a bitter experience for both of us all night long. They'll say, nice to see you. We'd like to look at them, and they'll say, would you like to have something to drink? And they'll say, yes, bring us a Negroni very quickly. And we will do that, and the race is off. Now, throughout the evening, at certain points, the music goes up and it goes down, depending on how we want people to maneuver their situation.
So tell me about the decision matrix. You are the maitre d' at your restaurant. You're looking out, you're casting a gaze at the room, and you're deciding to intervene musically.
Well,
how do
I
you
actually create all of the iPods, and I put them on, and they're almost on exact, I know not necessarily the exact content, but how loud it's going to be played is almost already planned.
So, for example, what is a song and a certain volume at a certain point in the evening that you think is productive at a certain moment?
At 6 o'clock, you could be easily listening to Dave Brubeck or Louis Armstrong.
Okay.
At 8 o'clock, you could easily be listening to The Cure. At 10 o'clock, you could easily be listening to PIL. Public Image Limited at Johnny Rotten Band. It gets a little bit louder as you get along later, and as the transition times between seatings happens, which is between 7:45 and 8:30 and between about 10 and 10:30, the music goes up just a little bit louder because people need to understand it's time to maneuver.
It's time to move.
Exactly.
But you would never say it's time to go.
We don't tell anybody
Right.
it's time to leave. You can
But
stay here as long as you want if you can listen to Led Zeppelin at 11.
But there's a subtle cue of music saying, get the fuck out.
Well, it's not get the fuck out. It's just like, change is coming.
Right.
You sense it.
The inertia of life is proceeding.
Somebody over there is going to be sitting right here in a few minutes.
So, I mean, this is an amazing point to make. There's nothing arbitrary about the construction of this night.
No, and in the hands of a good restaurateur, just like in the hands of a good architect, we want to lead you to the place that we know we're going to get. But it's going to change a little bit along the road. But we think about the customer and manipulating everything about them, their sonic response,
Right.
their comfort on their chair. I mean, there's pizzerias that we have what's affectionately known as a 1 hour and 10 minute chair. Because at 1 hour and 20 minutes, unless you're a kid, your butt's starting to bug you. And it's because it's time to leave.
It's time to leave.
Exactly.
And you can't say,
Well, you
it's
could say,
time
I'm
to
very
leave."
comfortable. Can I get a pillow? Yeah, we'll bring you whatever you
Yeah.
want. I mean, we don't want anybody uncomfortable, but there's time frames for each experience.
There's
And we
strategy.
understand- Exactly.
So we're talking about the kind of the specific construction of an experience in the sense that you're very tactical about it.
Absolutely.
What are examples where you have been more, I'm going to call it meandering, where you've built a restaurant, it's been going on, and you've made some course corrections based upon some experiential evidence you have? Or are you just always right
No,
the first
we're
time?
not always right. There's always adjustment, and adjustment can happen even after 6 years. You can think, you know what, it's time to really make that chair different, more comfortable. Let's say that in general, at the beginning, you might start with a very business strategy, and fundamentally, eventually, you realize, if I can augment this experience in any way, it won't be in shortening it, it will be in lengthening it. And can I make it more comfortable? Can I upgrade the chairs? Can I think about maybe softening the music? You know, maybe when I was 35, I want to listen to music differently than I want to listen to it now at 52, or 53. And we'll change that as along the road as we go. But there wasn't a playbook written for that long term. The playbook really ends at 1 year.
Right.
At 1 year open, you have played the book you planned on playing. And then you manipulate the experience to adjust to your own personal taste, but also if there's people that come in that want something that you realize might be something that a lot of people might want. I mean, in terms of the kitchen staff, for example, say there is your best friend from high school coming in and you're a sous chef, you're working on the line, and you really want to style them out. So you create this special something that you just sent to them. Well, the moment that I see that happen, I realize that we can do more. And I say, all right, remember that little thing you did with the quail egg and the caviar for your buddy? Let's give it to every customer next week. Why don't we offer it to them or give it to them as an amuse? Because if we're really working hard to make a VIP taste, then every customer in next week should be getting that VIP taste. And that's how you move the line forward for the staff in the kitchen.
So almost that you sort of set the target where you want to be. You actually get there in 1 year where you can accomplish it.
Right.
And now you're actually doing it, and now there's the beginning of the possibility of something beyond
Right,
that
we
point.
want to push it to greater success, greater comfort, greater taste, greater acidity, greater baseness, better wine list, better wine glass pairing with a particular dish. Like we start to think about how can we make just even one more bite just a little bit more perfect.
So it's really about a kind of a reduction, really refining the experience down, and then
Exactly.
having the time to intervene at more kind of micro levels.
Right.
So I want to switch gears for a minute. We're talking about a very intimate experience between a chef, a server, and a couple on a date in a restaurant. Let's talk about a mass experience. Let's talk about Italy.
Right.
Where you are also, I suspect, designing an experience.
Absolutely.
But you don't have the kind of hands-on infrastructure you do when you have hundreds of people in a much bigger space. How do you approach that design challenge?
Actually, you do have as much control. I mean, you can manipulate each of the tactile experiences that a customer will have to that small level. It just happens that you do it 100 times as opposed to 3 times or 40 times. And so what we do is we think about the same thing. How do we want them to come into the store? Or is there someone at the door greeting them? Is there someone telling them they can't come in? Sometimes one of the most powerful marketing weapons is to tell people, I'm sorry, we're full right now. And even if you weren't, we would never do that. But there is safety numbers. So at I believe when Italy has 11,000 some odd people in, we actually have to stop people from coming in.
The fire department is not happy with you at that point.
And that in itself, do you just let them stand out there and wait, or do you intelligently, if you will, bring them out taste of gelato to say thank you for waiting? You can extend beyond even your doors and extend the hospitality or your ideology. You could also go out there and tell them to screw off. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to go at it, but the hospitality of that kind of experience can be outside as well while they're resting or waiting or impatiently knocking around.
One of the things I think you do very well, and I mean, as I told you, I live about a block away, is it's big. It's really big. There are a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff, but there is an intimacy to it all.
Right.
How do you balance that? How do you manage that?
You know, it's funny. The experience of grocery shopping is traditionally based on walking through aisles, kind of up and back. You start with the frivolous, less necessary stuff, and by the time you get to what you really needed, you're at the back of the store. Well, this store is more of a piazza thing. It's more of a circular thing. So the customers walk in, and the first thing they see, depending on where they come in, is either the vegetable restaurant on one side on 23rd Street or the coffee bar on Fifth Avenue, Broadway. From either point there, you are about 120 feet from getting perhaps the most fundamental nourishment, a glass of wine. So we want to get you through to the glass of wine. The greatest thing that ever happened to me when we opened Italy is the first Sunday, we opened on, I don't know, Thursday. The first Sunday night, I'm walking around, they're just kind of looking, keeping an eye on it. There's a nice lady in her, late 60s, early 70s. We will call her a young lady from now on. And she's shopping, and she's looking at pasta sauces and looking like this. And then she puts them down, she puts one in her thing, she reaches in and she pulls up a giant glass of red wine and takes a big giant glug and puts it down. And I realized, we have created the best bar I've ever been to. And the experience of being able to taste things, sample things, look at things, ogle things, admire things, and have a little glass of wine or go get a plate of prosciutto in the piazza gives them 1,000 different ways to now understand this experience. And because there is not just a pile of shelving and stuff that I'm going to buy and take somewhere else, but there's stuff that I can actually touch and taste right here, it's another world. It's more intimate because suddenly the human touch enters. And if someone slices a piece of prosciutto and puts it on the plate for you and you bring it over there and you eat it, suddenly you're doing something that a human has done, not a machine has done. And that's where the joy of the experience happens.
And so you look at the existing paradigm of shopping, which is a linear process of going down shelves, doing a 180, then coming back around again.
Exactly.
And instead, you've supplanted it with a piazza of booze in the middle.
Yes.
And you've wrapped it in produce and restaurants.
Exactly.
But you've literally, I mean, you've taken, you're selling Italian food, but you've taken an Italian kind of urban design logic.
Right.
And
Like the piazza in Siena.
Yeah.
That's kind of our ideology.
So that's where it came
The
from.
only thing we really need is a palio to make this thing
Yeah, it's just
exciting.
horses
This is
just
a horse
running
race
around.
that they have, a bareback horse race.
It's like ridiculously dangerous, and
Right.
like people die every year. That would be
It
another.
would be killer if we could have that.
Yeah. And the fire department's concerned you have 1,000 people in the
Exactly.
place.
Exactly. And 7 horses.
So it's like a T-shirt.
Exactly.
So Italy has become an incredibly, it's not just I imagine, a successful store, but it's a piece of the city. It's a corner, on an important corner, that participates in Madison Square Park.
Right.
You're about to create yet another.
Yes, right here in Chicago.
Where?
Chicago, Illinois. The most American city.
Without making it feel like too much of a turn plug right there, which is good, right? It's just tell me about it. How does, as you said before, the space becomes a driver in the design and the conception.
Exactly.
You have this amazing space in the corner 23rd.
It was an ESP. Oh, you mean
Yeah, I'm saying,
in New York.
but you've kind of perfected it for this space in New York. what is the driver here in Chicago that's going to transform the idea?
Well, keep in mind, the place in New York already had that piazza in it.
That's right.
Like, we just kind of shoehorned it in, and that kind of four corners of that was effectively the toy building. So if you wanted to come to Mattel in the 40s, you would come to Mattel. They would have lots of little offices, very much like you'd imagine in a Michael Chabon book. And down in the main area, there was a piazza, or a marble-looking, far fancier looking than your offices would look. And you would meet your clients down there, you would entertain them, you would show them your stuff. So that already existed. Here, as opposed to moving into something as romantic as that, we're moving into what used to be an ESPN zone restaurant, which is as less romantic as possible.
Hence the jalapeno poppers.
Exactly, the poppers with the robiola, though. I know that's what you were thinking. So we have this big space that you access by a giant kind of grand staircase or escalator after walking in. Downstairs, the vegetables are going to be there and the produce, and it's going to feel really grocery, but you're not going to see all of the restaurant component, which are up one flight.
I see.
And it was such a beautiful space in its volume and its kind of glassiness around the outside that it will be exactly as we want. Entirely different than the New York store, but it will feel grand and important and special and kind of crazy like that.
But will it have a sense that Chicago has augmented the design in some way?
Oh, absolutely, because the meat and salami restaurant is going to celebrate the great Eastern European tradition of sausages as well as the Italian one. And we'll be making beer on the location, so we'll be serving this kind of brewy, bratwursty Italian take on perhaps the northeastern part of Italy. We'll have a little more touch there.
So there is a site specificity that kind of participates in your conception of the new place.
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to say, as someone who's eaten in your restaurants many times in New York, it is fascinating to know just how specifically you sculpt the experience and why I knew it was time to leave your restaurant. Ladies and gentlemen, Mario Batali.